and welcome to the SBL waiting room. It's a new season, and of course things are kicking off really fun. Season 9 has already been a treat if you've been watching the SCC. If you watched the kickoff LAN, that one was fun, but we'll see how much of that remains true throughout the SPL because we are starting it up just about 25 minutes from now. Things are going to be kicking off. Not a lot of changes happened between, well, at least the teams from Season 8 to Season 9. A couple of players, the Bolts, they have a new coach. Pagon's in as the new mid for the Dragons. We got a whole new Valks team. Otherwise, it's just single swaps pretty much all around the league and a lot of similar names. So you'll recognize a lot of them. We'll get to see how exactly they adapt to the new metas here in Season 9. Of course, you're going to be hearing a lot about the things that change, the obelisk, the scepter that it comes with, the little snake ladies that are in the lane and the offerings, all of that, plus the items and all the fun relic things, the glyphs. It's almost too much to handle and too much to list in just a small moment. So we'll talk about it all weekend and probably for the next 4 weeks while Phase 1 is going on, every time it comes up. Either way, that's going to kick us off. So instead, welcome to the SBL waiting room. How sick. Trelly did those tier lists 2 days ago, and it's in the video already.
Quick.
That's awesome.
Hey, we're the best video team. I'm gonna put it out there. They're the best.
We do have a sick video team. I got Mifflin and J-Mac hanging out with me, and we're going to be talking some Smite. We have a lot of rookie. Well, a lot. I don't know if the way is the way
we
to.
Have 3.
We have 4. Whoa, 4.
Okay, I was close.
Yeah, we find the middle ground, right? Not a few, not a lot, but. A couple.
Well, no.
No,
a couple would be 2.
It is a few.
Is a few 3 to 5? A handful.
Yeah.
I like a handful.
A pinch.
A pinch should be like 1.
Well, it depends. A pinch of salt is a lot of salt, though.
It's a lot of salt.
How big a pinch are you
doesn't know
guys
what to do
going
with
with?
How many pieces of salt are in your pinches? Tiny fingers.
Oh, maybe that's the difference. I do have smaller fingers compared to other people.
I get at least 20.
How did this turn into finger talk? What happened here? Either way, you know what? Gloss over that. We're going to be moving into what I want to talk about, which is the rookie roundup that we have. Again, we have a couple of new players in the league. And realistically, 3 of them are on one team. So we can talk a little bit about essentially the Valks. Wowie and Aquarius already have experience, so they get glossed over. We'll look into them a little bit more. Pagon is the first person on the list, though. And Mifflin, as a new mid laner, you're kind of stepping into where, it was Hurrwind last year, and then before that it was Twig. So I like experience shoes to fill. How do you think he's going to do?
I feel like I've got very high expectations of Pagon, namely because I had said in the past that, I believe in Season 7 even, that I think he is the next mid laner that was going to come up to the SPL. He has been very impressive and consistent throughout the last couple of years, has a very deep god pool. We've already seen it flex a couple of times during the For Fun tournament that we just saw for the SPL, where he goes towards some of those assassins, but can very similarly play mages at a very high level. I think Pagon is going to fit in very well. My only concern for him is the fact that he is on the Jade Dragons. It is not going to go over his head that every single year only one player has been replaced on that team, and it's been the mid laner. With Captain Twig,
the pressure is on.
Yeah, either win worlds or get benched, it's starting to seem like for mid, because that is the only role that has seen any changes. That said, having had the opportunity to speak with the Jade Dragons holistically, each and one of those guys has said multiple times that they are very confident in Pagon's ability and that he meshes well with the team. I think, as far as I'm concerned, his mechanical prowess is very high up there. I think he can match up with some of the best mid laners in the league. Maybe not the best, because Shinto goes absolutely nuts, but look, I trust him, man. I think Pagon's going to have a great year.
And J-Mac, I think it was last week he played I wanted to just say an arbitrary number of 12 different gods, but it was almost a different god every game.
Yeah.
It might have actually been a different god every game.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was every single game that Pagon played, it was a different one, even to the fact that when Panda Cat was playing nothing but Uller, we were still questioning if Uller was going to go to Panda Cat or not, and then they gave us the Uno reverse card there. Pagon is a very diverse god pool, and I think that comes by nature of him also being the brother to BennyQ, who also has one of the most
Think it
diverse.
runs in the family?
Yeah, I think
It's
so.
like a
I think the apple
bloodline
doesn't fall far from the tree out here. I think both these guys are insane out
Benny
here.
his dad?
What?
You said this doesn't fall far from the tree.
Can't hear, but anyway, going with it, I mean, Pagon has been in this league for such a long time. He's been grinding out this game. He's really shown, just in this first week, yes, in this for fun tournament, he got to play a little bit of the wackier things out here, but he showed that he's successful on them. It's not like he was playing these Susano mids and going like 0-8. He was playing Susano mids and diving tier 2 towers 8 minutes into the game. He was picking these hunters and winning these matchups. Maybe even just going even in that case. I have high hopes for this mid laner. As you said, he's one that's been sitting right there at the cusp end of SPL for so long. So now getting his first rookie year out here in the SPL. But being with the Dragons, a team that has kind of left their mid laner alone more often than not, kind of essentially made it a feast or famine for this mid. He has some big shoes to fill in here. He's got a lot of things that he will have to kind of learn as he goes with this team. But talking with pretty much every single member of the Dragons in an interview last week, every single one of them said he seems to have filled these shoes in pretty nicely so far. So I have high hopes for this player.
And J-Mac, I'm excited to see it, but you mentioned, I think very appropriately, that this is kind of like a familial thing because Pagon has a brother in the league, and it's BennyQ. And I'm going to talk about our fantasy league a little bit later and how we're going to try to link that in every week and the conversations around that. But someone you drafted for your fantasy league, I tweeted that out on Tuesday or something, is BennyQ. Again, someone who has been in the scene for ages at this point, but he finally has now made that breakthrough to the SPL, and you had mentioned it, can kind of play some wonky stuff, but he's also really good at just the standard mages. He's just been a solid player.
And that's always kind of been the thing of mid lane, is you have to be good at the meta. That's for every role. You have to be good at what are the top 3 to 5 gods right now. Okay, cool. Those are now getting banned out. You look at players like Paul, who when we watch some of his games, he has 5, 6, 7 bans basically essentially thrown towards him at that point, and he's still able to find something in order to play. And that's where the nature of players like BennyQ come in is, yes, they have the 4 to 5 top meta gods that they can play, but when those go out, what do you go back to? Well, he's got Shock, he's got Kabrakan, Wukong, Tsukuyomi. Those are just the 4 immediately that come to mind, and every single time you say those, people go, well, those aren't mid laners. Those aren't mages. Those aren't gods that you would expect to be able to play out there. But BennyQ has done them to a very successful level, so much in fact that he was able to help bring his team to a Worlds qualification stage at the end of Season 8. And the thing about it is, that was only Benny's first full year as a mid laner. He wasn't always a mid lane player. The fact that he's able to grow and develop that quickly in this role and bring this level of success brings real high hopes for him and the rest of his team around here. I have very high expectations for him. I think that this is going to be a very strong first start for the Valkyries. I'm going to say it outright. I think that this team is going to struggle for their very first phase, but that's the growing pains of coming from the SCC as a full squad now into the SPL, is that the SPL doesn't play like the SCC by any means.
And that, like you said, is going to be something. I think even the Leviathans mentioned that. We asked them in a post-game interview last week or something like that, where they were like, yeah, they're going to be good. Just, give them time. They got to get used to it. Except they said it in much more their voices and not whatever I just did, which was not accurate enough for my.
You sounded a lot like Wrong You.
Yeah,
I heard it.
You could hear it. The flavors of Latin America, like the Spanish upbringing, things like that.
Yeah, I got all that.
Fun fact, I am on a 104-day streak in Duolingo on my Spanish. So, look, I'm just saying, Worlds, maybe full Spanish interview. I'll sound like a kindergartner, but it's going to be sick. Either way, maybe we'll figure that out. Again, Kirmi, Gamma, 2 other players on this. I think, Kirmi in the jungle ties in pretty close with BennyQ, Mifflin, and Gamma is somebody that you picked up onto your fantasy squad. Yeah, well, don't know not this. You did.
Well, yeah, I picked him up, but you got to take into account the circumstances in which I picked Gamma. It's not that I think that Gamma is a poor player. I think that the Valkyries, similar to what J-Mac said, are going to struggle this year just because they are newer to the league. I think that it's going to be very hard to break into this style of meta. But I took Gamma because the other options were awesome shaking them down. Okay? And when the Bolts lose, when the Scarabs lose, those guys' slash lines don't look so good, and fantasy is KDA based. So I went with the unknown, the relative unknown that is Gamma, hoping that he just doesn't die as much as Inbound does.
He's just got his fingers crossed. You're feeling pretty good about
it. Just less, please.
Just less. Just don't go 0-10. I remember it was actually really funny to me because I was talking to Neil about it prior, and he was because I think him and Cuvo were playing ping pong, and he was like, "Oh, well, how's it scored?" And I was like, "Oh, well, like most of it is like points on KDA," and he goes, "Don't pick me." And then Cuvo pipes up next to him, and we go, "Don't pick me either." So I guess we know how the Warriors are feeling about their KDAs.
Who was it that picked Cuvo?
Hindu picked up Cuvo, so we'll see.
And people on Twitter are still standing Hindu's fantasy draft.
People love Hindu.
You can love Hindu. You can love whatever you want, but I can say, call a spade, man. His draft is...
And you know what? I have more to talk about that. In fact, we can talk about the fantasy as a whole. So again, we're drafting a fantasy league. Here's my tweet about it. That was just the draft order, as well as specifically what players that we all brought into our teams, as well as coaches. On this tweet was also like the scoring, but as you had mentioned, like very heavy KDA based. There's some team bonuses, most kills in the game, I think most damage in the game, most assists in the game, things like that, most assists on the team for supports. And then coaches get points based on wins. I believe like Fire Giants and Gold Furies are getting awarded to them as well. If you want to participate in your own version of fantasy, I will tell you, you can go to Reddit. There's a user, Pagon Goblin, that runs one. There's a what is it called? Discord. They have a Twitter. There's a whole ton of stuff you can do. There's going to be scoring on there. I've seen like 3 or 4 different fantasy leagues on there. I just went for the one I saw that updated the most, so that's the reason that I can back that one. But there are a whole ton of them. I even have, because of this, the scores written down as to what our teams would have performed with
You don't have to
if
tell
we
them.
used Season 8.
All right.
So starting at the bottom, and again, this is using zeros instead of BennyQ because BennyQ wasn't in the league. And we needed points to put there instead of just a fat zero for you. J-Mac would have lost with 48-21. Unfortunate for you. Then it would have gone over to Trelly, who would have been using Hurry's stats instead of Pagon.
These rookies.
Then it goes over to Mifflin. Mifflin had 59-13, but it's using Rafts instead of Gamma because Gamma wasn't in the league.
And Raph died a lot.
He did.
Then it goes over to Hindu. All of his players were there. He's at 59-90. Huh?
Who's Hindu's mid laner?
His mid laner is Paul.
Yeah, that's why.
That's where he got a lot of points.
That's why.
Then it was me. I had Row instead of Masked Score, so we'll see how that ends up changing things up. And Dave ended up winning by literally 1,000 points just based on Season 8. And it's because Shinto was 500 points over literally every other mid laner. It was nuts. That's the note I wrote down. So, I guess congratulations, Dave. You're on vacation. Your birthday's tomorrow. Happy birthday, whatever.
The big 3-0. Congratulations.
Yeah? You're just going to keep saying that. People are going to believe you.
Well, it's because he's 30. Why wouldn't you believe
Isn't
me?
he like 20? He's going to be 20.
He was born in 1992.
Yeah?
That's right.
And you said that with conviction, so I have to believe you. Either way, fantasy in the future, we're going to be kind of linking that in with our predictions and kind of talking about like, okay, well, yeah, we think like X is going to do well this set, therefore that means good points for like Miff or for J-Mac or for me or whoever. We'll talk about who wins week in, week out. But for this week, we actually have Trelly standing by to help you figure out who you should be voting for.
What's up, Smite fans? Now we are going to be looking at the schedule for this week here. And again, yeah, I guess what Gore said is true. I'm going to be helping you guys decide what you're going to be voting for here. First up, if you go in-game and you click that esports tab, you're going to be seeing the Camelot Kings versus Leviathans. And if you don't know which one to vote for here, I'm going to give you a little secret here. Leviathans are looking pretty unstoppable right now. Not to say that the Kings maybe weren't holding a little bit back in that tournament. They did, voice their opinions that they were like keeping some strats, under wraps. But I'm thinking the Leviathans are looking pretty unstoppable right now. So I'm going to put my faith in them. And, you can vote however you see fit. But set number 1, definitely going to be giving that one to the Leviathans. Now, set number 2, we have Olympus Bolts versus the Oni Warriors. This one, again, the Oni Warriors, they're having a little bit of a rough patch. They did qualify back into the SPL, but they didn't do it two-handedly. While the Bolts, they've been looking pretty solid as well. So I'm going to go ahead and give my vote to the Olympus Bolts over the Oni Warriors for set 2. Again, it's not to say that the Oni Warriors don't have the talent. They can perform. I'm just feeling that the Bolts they're looking pretty solid right now. And the Warriors, they have a lot to prove. And I feel like they're gonna be looking to prove that. But right now, I'm going to have to give that one to the Bolts as well. Now, April 2nd, we got the next day, the Camelot Kings for the Olympus Bolts. This one is going to be a little bit different. You know what? I've been thinking about this one a good bit, and I'm going to have to give this one again to the Olympus Bolts. Maybe if the Kings show us some promise here against the Leviathans, I'm going to be giving some fire to them. But again, I saw Variety go, what, like 1-27 or something? I think Genetics just tweeted, or I think Twig just tweeted about it. So they're going to have to show me some fire. I'm going to have to see that fire in their eyes before I'm able to give them a win over the Bolts. So I hear Miff yelling from the sides, it's a hot take, but I think the Bolts are going to take that one as well, unless the Kings really show me something today. Now, here we go. Jade Dragons versus the Solar Scarabs. This one is going to be interesting as well. We already saw that matchup, but I think I got to give this one to the Jade Dragons once again. They had some close fights. They had some, some solid gameplay, but I don't think the Scarabs were ready to take on the Jade Dragons just yet. And I'm going to have to give that edge to the Dragons once again. Now, the Solar Scarabs versus the new Valhalla Valkyries. This is actually going to be a super interesting set. And as much as I want to give credit to the underdogs, because again, we've only seen them play versus the ex-world champions, and they looked pretty solid. I'm going to give the edge to the Solar Scarabs. I wanted to make you guys hold your breath on that one. Again, these guys, the Valhalla Valkyries, as we've said, they have some growing pains, but they looked really solid against arguably, not even arguably, the best team in the league right now, definitively, the world champions. So despite them looking good, I would love to see them come out swinging against the Solar Scarabs, but right now, I'm going to have to give the edge to them as well. And then, last set, April 3rd, we're going to be looking at the Tartarus Titans versus the Jade Dragons. And again, I'm going to have to give the edge to the Tartarus Titans because they were looking really solid. Even against Leviathans, they showed a little bit of life, but besides that, they didn't drop a single game all the way up until those finals. So I'm going to have to give them the edge there as well. Pretty much picking everyone that you would assume. So I hope you guys are, going in and voting those sort of things. You don't have to take exactly my votes, but this is a good rubric to go for here. Remember, make sure you are doing your own sort of research, watching these games and picking accordingly. But that's going to be my predictions for this week, and we're going to throw it back over to Gore, J-Mac, and Miff on the desk. And
I'm, at least for one of those, probably. Well, actually, also, Warriors and Kings are playing at the very end of the week. It was cut off at the very bottom there, so that one's another one. That one's pretty easy, though, to... Guys, come on, it's Kings. Anyway, we can move forward. Okay. And I think okay, Mifflin, you want to make an argument for the Warriors against the Kings on Sunday?
Well, I don't want to derail the conversation. I guess the point that I'll make now that I have the floor is that Trelly is lucky that we're not keeping track of casters voting this year, or are we? I don't think we are.
No, that's what this is, the fantasy thing.
We're doing the fantasy thing, yeah. Trelly, congratulations, man. You dodged a bullet by a year.
By a year. That's what he says. We can take a look at the full week ahead of us and see what the schedule is going to be shaking out here for the SPL. Here's the first 2 days. And as you can see, it's the match of the week, Kings versus Bolts there, starting out tomorrow at 1 p.m. But today, we're kicking off with Kings and Leviathans, a semifinals from Worlds rematch. It was at the time, best of 5, 3-1 in favor of the Leviathans. I kind of want to ask you guys, I think for the most part, it was very, very easy and stable to agree with what Trelly had said. A lot of the teams that we've seen do well are probably going to do well this week. But this first one's going to be a little bit of a doozy.
Yeah, I think so. When we're talking about these two teams, we know what the Leviathans are capable of. The world champions, they came into this last little play-in tournament, kickoff tournament that we had with them, and they just dominated across the board. Just plain and simple, they were the dominant team out here. Again, it was a bit more for fun. We heard from some of the Kings players that they want to hold on to some strategies, and that's something that we're probably going to harp on a lot today is what are these strategies that are being hidden? What are all the teams in general not showing us just yet? Because we saw a lot of Assassin Solo come out into the meta. We saw a lot of just stranger picks out there that we're not used to. We also saw some very kind of bog standard drafts out there. We threw Atlas into the mix for a couple of these teams. That was something that at least the Titans and the Leviathans were fighting over more than anything else. But when it comes down to these two teams, the last matchup they had, as you said, was a 3-1 back at Worlds. Yeah. Leviathans were by and far the best team in the league at that point in time, and the Kings were the only one to take a single game off of them at that point. That was also when the Kings had only had a couple of weeks, really necessarily, to play together as a full squad here on land. Now they've had all of that time since Worlds to work together, all that time to scrim and build up these strategies and build up that teamwork with each other here. I think that the Kings could be a massive threat here. Yeah. I don't want to give a 2-0 to either of these ones, but I still am probably going to put a 2-1 Leviathans if I'm going to give my own prediction here. I think the Leviathans have just been the most consistent team across the board over the last 6 months of play, and this is even including this off time that we have had there. These guys have been nonstop, just consistent across the board here. So I'm going to give to the Leviathans, but I think that the Kings are going to give us a real run for our money out here.
That's going to be a fun one to kick things off. Again, match of the day, or sorry, match of the week is still going to be tomorrow, Mifflin. It's Kings versus Bolts. It's going to be a real fun one to watch. SPL starting up in about 6 minutes. And I know last week, again, we did this whole kickoff tournament. We heard a lot of fun things about the graphics package. We were talking about it, and we were trying to get some things done. And so we have something to debut for you here in Phase 1. So we're going to take a quick break. You'll get to see all of the new awesome graphics that we've been working on. We'll be right back with the SBL.